if you have any interest in natural history, you often find yourself fascinated by mysteries as well in natural history. And I was drawn to this little book I came across in the library, and it's called Mysteries Uncovered: True Stories of the Paranormal and Unexplained. Now, many of these paranormal things, of course, there's the usual mix of UFO stuff, but there's also other kinds of mysteries, from the Mare Celeste to the lost colony of Roanoke in America, and all sorts of strange things like that. But one of the most interesting cases I came across, one of the most interesting things I came across in this book, because it's so well written, that this is a Penguin book and it's written by Emily G. Thompson. And as far as I know, she has a website devoted to mysteries, all kinds of mysteries. They can be missing people, they can be strange events, they can be natural occurrences, anything. But in this particular chapter, it's called the Isdal Woman. And the Isdal Woman was a woman who was murdered in Norway. And they never managed to identify her, and they think she may have been involved in espionage, a spy or something. But it was weird what happened to her, because the way in which she was murdered. But what's just the most completely fascinating thing, because I think it was in the early 1970s she was murdered, was that they couldn't actually identify her, and they never have to this day. They don't know who she was. She had lots of money, she had teeth full of gold fillings, she was very well to do, but they don't know who she was. But it has in it a very interesting little paragraph which took me off on a whole other direction. And it says, the following year, another break in the case came when experts at the Forensic Medicine Agency at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm examined the Isdal woman's teeth and concluded she was closer to 40 years old, because they were trying to identify her age. Scientists had used a more modern method of analysis known as carbon-14 analysis. This was linked to atomic bomb blasts. Between 1955 and 1963, thousands of nuclear bombs had been tested in the open air, causing a spike in the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. In 1963, the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty made this illegal. In future, nuclear weapons could only be exploded underground. Now, the reason for exploding them underground obviously wasn't to produce less carbon or anything like that. I don't think they factored carbon in at all. But what it says here is, when carbon is in the air, it settles in the enamel of a child's teeth. So that's all children on Earth. As they are forming, once formed, the teeth do not absorb any more carbon. Because of this, people whose teeth formed after 1955 typically carry an extra annual signature in their tooth enamel. So when the Isdal woman's teeth were examined using carbon-14 analysis, it was determined she had no increased carbon, meaning that her teeth must have been fully formed by 1955, making her approximately 10 or 12 years old by then. And you see, that's the really interesting thing. Now, this book obviously is completely unrelated to issues of climate change, but it does make you think, if so much carbon has been released into the atmosphere by nuclear blasts, by nuclear weapons that are being tested, and even though they're officially not testing any, you can be pretty sure they are somewhere on Earth. Why are they not factoring this into climate change? It's being ignored, and in fact they're trying to make all of us responsible. But clearly, if before 1955 people weren't having this extra carbon in their teeth, despite the massive amounts of industrialization going on, then nuclear weapons, they are really something special, and they are producing carbon and have affected the climate in a gigantic way. And I think it's fair to say that, from my point of view, the countries that make nuclear weapons and produce it, they should be footing the bill. So I think those countries that have been making nuclear weapons, they really ought to be getting taxed for their weapons industry needs to be getting taxed for carbon production, and that's so far is being ignored. It's not even mentioned. I never heard it anywhere, but clearly when you read it in a book like this, you put the pieces together, you discover that yes, they have to be, because to produce so much carbon, it's actually interfering with the development of children's teeth, and that it didn't happen before 1955 clearly shows there's something very special and problematic about carbon production from nuclear weapons creations and detonations.